You know that meme, that Halloween meme where it's like me on September 30th and then me on October 1st? Well, before I can do that with myself and get into the spooky season, we got to wrap up the month of September first. Hey, what's up, bookworms? Mike back, another monthly wrap up, this time for September of 2024. We are 3/4 of the way done with this year, and the year is just zipping by, isn't it? Well, this was a fun month as that precursor to all things spooky season. I enjoyed everything that I did read this month, and we're going to talk about those, not at length, but enough that you can get an idea of how I felt about the book. So let's begin, like usual, talk about what I read in September. I read 4 novels, and I started a 5th, almost actually finished a 5th one. But I had a good time continuing with this process of, one sci-fi, one horror, one fantasy, etc., etc. And let's begin with that sci-fi. I did do A Canticle for Leibowitz by Walter Miller Jr. I actually did get a review up for that earlier this week. This is one of those where you look back at it and you say, I can understand why this book has the lasting impression that it does. All these decades later, it is still a book that I feel like is the launching point for the post-apocalyptic, they're dropping the bombs kind of dystopian novel. I feel like this is really kind of the launching point of all that, because you think at the time, it was speculative fiction, but it was more of they were writing from a process of it's not if we're going to drop the bombs, it's when. It really felt like the doomsday clock had arrived and it was already past midnight, and it was just we were just holding our breath and waiting. And that comes through in the pages there. But I love so many themes in that book about church versus state and things like that. Really, really great stuff. So it was a good time, and I'm glad that I did read it, and getting to read from that lovely Folio Society edition did really make it more of an immersive experience. Ordinary Grace by William Krueger. This was actually our pick for the *𝕠𝕠𝕤𝕤 for the month, or I guess for this quarter of the year. This was actually my pick, and we did that review over on Philip's channel, and it was great because, if anything, it got us to do a live stream of Philip's channel, which I wasn't sure he knew how to do. So I'm proud of him. I'm proud of him. You've come so far, Philip. I appreciate you. And I appreciate the *𝕠𝕠𝕤𝕤. It's been a lot of fun. And talking about Ordinary Grace was just a blast for me, because wonderful, wonderful book. And I think I'd recommend it to anyone, even if you're not, from small town America, or you don't really like coming of age stories. I feel like you'll find something to like in that book. Blood Song by Anthony Ryan. This was the fantasy one for the month. This one, I swear I said that I enjoyed it, but it was a letdown. For me, it's just the expectations. It had been built up. It has damn near universal acclaim from fantasy fans. They claim this is one of the best standalone novels, and they call it a standalone because it seems like no one ever really has very many nice things to say about the sequels. But this book can be approached as a standalone. That's what I'm going to do it as, because I didn't like it enough to keep going, but I did like it. I know it sounds like all you're hearing is the negatives, and I think anytime it's a beloved book like this, you are going to hear the negatives only. For me, it was too much of a Name of the Wind wannabe, a book I'm already not very high on. So it was wanting to be like Name of the Wind, and it wasn't as good as Name of the Wind, in my opinion. And even with me not being as high on Name of the Wind as everybody else, I can look at a lot of things Name of the Wind and say they did that right. With this, I can look at less and say he did it right. For me, I know a lot of people will snap at me and say, oh, well, it's unreliable narrator. It's supposed to be that way. Well, that's fine, guys. I understand it. That's clearly just not something I like. A character just telling the audience how awesome they are. And it just makes me not really worry about the character like at all. I appreciate a good life story. I do. It's actually one of my favorite things Stephen King does, with the character just running through the years of their life. I do appreciate that. And I like the framing narrative. I think it's something that can work if it's done right. With this, though, it was just, the character never had any struggle, and it just kind of took me out of it. And then the ending was just very anticlimactic. What they were going to in the framing story, what we were getting to, and it just made me think of Reaper's Gale, where it was this big event planned, and you read 1,400 pages and then got to, and you're like, really? That's it, huh? Okay. So yeah, it was a letdown, but I still, again, I did enjoy the book. I wasn't miserable while I was reading it. And the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. Kind of mixed to positive on this one. I liked a lot of it. I think that Grady did grind his axe with some social issues a little too much for my taste. And it's not because I agreed or disagreed with him. Honestly, a lot of things he's talking about in the book, I agreed with. That's never going to be a reason that I say that this is something I don't like in my books. What I don't like is when you spend so much time on it, you're getting away from the main plot. I feel like he does do that a few times. But overall, it was a great story. It made me hold my breath a few times. It made me actually quite a little nervous a few times. I think that's all I can ask from modern horror is at this age is something that makes you feel a little uncomfortable. I feel like that's the key to great horror at this age. And I feel like Grady Hendrix is going to be an author that I do dig into. He's 2 for 2 for me now. I'm very, very happy with what he's put out there. This didn't reach the heights of My Best Friend's Exorcism, but I think one of my criticisms was I wish it would have leaned a little bit more into the 90s nostalgia, because he did that with My Best Friend's Exorcism. He leaned into the 80s nostalgia, but still made sure he kept it a great story. He didn't just rely on just that. Whereas this one, I felt like, okay, you're going to set this take place in the 90s, and you aren't using very many of the 90s fun kind of stuff that I felt like we could have used. But again, these are nitpicks, and it doesn't take away from the fact that this was a really good vampire story. And I always am here for a good vampire story. And I did start the first of my spooky season reads, which is The Hollow Places by Teen Kingfisher. That's an author who's been recommended to me to a ton. And I'll talk about that more in October, since it is going to be one of my spooky season reads. So I did get a little head start on spooky season. That's always fun. It's nice when you dip into some of these horror novels and you realize, hey, they're only like 300 pages long, and there's only a handful of characters, and they usually take place in one location. That's usually pretty nice. When you read so many fantasy novels, and you basically got to download an encyclopedia into your brain to make sure you understand everything. But there can only be one, guys. Who is the book of the month for September? I really went back and forth with this because I appreciated the vampire book. I thought Bloodsong did more things that I'm actually getting across to you guys that I liked and I didn't like. Ordinary Grace has coming of age. It's tough to beat for me. And Canticle for Leibowitz, guys. This is an all-timer. This is one of those really, really good. So what's it going to be? If you've been following the channel, I'm pretty sure you can figure out that for me, the only subgenre that is undefeated on this channel is coming of age, and that is why it's going to be Ordinary Grace by William Kent Krueger. This was a book that was guaranteed to me from people in comments of my coming of age video that there was zero chance I wouldn't like this. Well, you know what? I am that transparent because you were right. This was an incredible, incredible book. So many things with this resonate with me personally, and I say that you don't have to grow up in small town America. You don't have to, live in a small town or even appreciate coming of age stories quite like I do to really get into this. For me, it was personal on levels because there were so many things I could relate to the main character about. His dad in this story is a PTSD war veteran. And my dad was clearly suffering that because my dad was a Vietnam veteran. And it's one of those things that just like his dad in this book, he never talked about. My dad passed away in 2017. He never talked about his time in Vietnam because of the stuff that he saw there. And so that really struck a chord with me. And also, I can kind of look at this from the dad point of view. Because I always say I like coming of age because, it's nostalgic. It makes you think about those things when you were growing up. And that's always fun because I feel like all of us went through the same process growing up, And I think your life might have been different, but we all kind of learned those new things together. That coming of age moment, that transition from childhood into adulthood. It does it beautifully here. And it's also horrific because of the event that happens that makes it be that way. And that's where, for me, the dad shit in this book actually got me a lot because I feel like the dad in this book is just, I wish I had 1/100th of the patience that this man has. He is just a rock when things are really, really going bad. But it asks those questions, of your faith in God and things like that, and what you go through in a crisis moment, how you react to it. And I think a big part of coming of age is where you're going to fall on religion if you have that upbringing, and you kind of get to the age where you're making your own decisions on these things. Do I believe in a higher power? Do I not? But it never grinds an axe in a way where I feel like, hey, this is too, heavy-handed for me with its religious things. Absolutely not. It doesn't really do that. These are things that kind of clicked with me in my own life. Some of the things that I went through, obviously growing up in a strict religious family. So it has all those things. It has a murder mystery that I never, ever figured out until like literally 2 sentences before it was revealed is when I figured it out. And it's just, it makes you think about so many things that just were a joy growing up. And, we kind of took for granted at the time, or we kind of actually would think, hey, you get older and you're like, I wish I could tell myself back then that you were living in the good times. And I think it really gets that across quite well. And the moment in this book where you realize what the title Ordinary Grace means. I have a kid who's on the spectrum and he had speech delay for a long, long time. So speech impediments and things like that being written in the story was something that, again, resonated with me as a dad. So it's got all those things. It's got all those things that I like of coming of age. It's got those things that you go through as a parent. It's just an all-around amazing book, and I feel like there's going to be something in here that clicks with everybody. And William Kent Krueger is definitely an author I will pick up again, even if it's not a coming-of-age story, because I feel like he's earned my trust after this one. While I say it was close because of the historical significance of Walter Miller Jr.'s Chronicle for Leibowitz, for me, this is just exactly what I look for in a coming-of-age book. It hit all those notes. And it was something that I could not get enough of. I could not stop thinking about it. It was the first book I read in this month, and I haven't stopped thinking about it since. Just a beautiful, beautiful, haunting book, and I recommend it to everyone. That's why it is the book of the month for September, guys. Is Ordinary Grace by William Kent Krueger. Pick it up. How about some channel growth on the channel? Look, I'm going to keep this brief because I'm beginning to wonder if I even need to do this section anymore, because being blunt with you guys, the growth and the engagement is like dead. And it's been like that since the hack of the channel. I'm clearly out of the algorithm. So, I mean, I am not exaggerating. It's not hyperbolic that dozens and dozens of people will email me, message me, leave a comment saying, I don't get notifications about your videos anymore. I don't see them anymore unless I search for your channel. Look, that's just the game we play with the YouTube algorithm. There is no real figuring it out, you know. And again, for me, that's fine. That's fine. I love the community that I have here, and I'm fine with that. I'm just saying that maybe I'll stop engaging this if it's not something that is going to continue to process. So I'm just going to kind of leave it at that for this month, because I didn't even pull the numbers for it, because all I got was 3 red arrows. So I'm just gonna stop doing that. One thing is I'm just gonna keep on keeping on, but I've decided maybe I'll start trying to do my videos a little shorter. So I've seen some videos that have been like 10 and 12 minutes recently. I'm trying to see if that makes any difference as I try to figure out how to get back into the good graces of the YouTube overlords. But if that don't happen, it's cool. I still got you, right? I hope. Thank you guys for sticking around this long. Let's go ahead and look at some most popular content here. I did 13 full-length videos and 1 live stream this month. Didn't get any short content out there, but there's always room to grow in October, right? But let's look at some of the most popular videos here. The 5 most popular at 22,000 views. As of this recording, 5-star chonkers. This was meant to be the counterpart for my Are You Tired of Big Books video. And I had lots of people being like, I'm not tired of big books. Why don't you recommend some of those? I said, I got you. So looking at some of my favorite books that are around the 1,000-page mark or so. Now that varies. Obviously, I got called out for that in the comments because a lot of that varies depending on what version of the book you're reading from. Some of the mass market paperbacks will be like 1,200 pages, and the hardcover will be like 860, and things like that. Like there's a few like exceptions where some were like 880 pages, like Demon in White by Chris Rocky. I'll put that one on there. It's not 1,000 pages, but I feel like it's a heavy enough read that it kind of did classify for that. So that's why I put it on there. But a lot of good feedback on that. And if I got people checking out things like The Count of Monte Cristo, checking out things like Shogun, checking out things like Ken Follett, then hey, that was the purpose of that video, to get you guys to not be scared of those big books. I know that we all get a little burned out sometimes, and I do recommend shifting gears, doing some shorter books, doing some quick ones, switching genres, things like that. But in the end, I think as fantasy fans, we like big books, and we cannot lie, right? An Italian, an Irishman, and a guy with Wi-Fi walk into a bar. This is at 12,000 views. This was just, I went to Dallas for the Christopher Rocchio, Ryan Cahill signing. I was the moderator for them, and I just said, hey, let's get something on camera, while we're here together, just goofing off. So it was really almost like a talk about nothing. Because it wasn't as much of talking about like things that they struggled through as authors. It's just like, let's just see what happens. It's just fun. We were just bullshitting. We'd had a few beers. I wanted them to drink some Texas beers while they were here, and just kind of goofing off. And I had a great time with it. A lot of people got mad that Ryan talks too much. Ryan likes to dominate the conversation. That's just the type of guy that he is. But that's why I did a separate video with Christopher Rocchio, When Worlds Collide, as I call it. And that one had 11,000 views, is because a lot of people felt like Christopher got shortchanged in that conversation. I guess me and Ryan were talking all over him. I knew that Christopher and I were going to have this separate conversation, so it was not a big deal for me on that end. But again, guys, I feel like if you've been in a conversation before, that's just how it goes. That's just how conversation flows. You're not meaning to talk over anyone. It wasn't an interview. We were just hanging out. But with the Christopher Rocchio one, I want to make sure it was a little more focused, and we talked about a lot of things. Talked about his love for Gene Wolfe, him talking about why Chronicle for Leibowitz is a great, great book, and many, many other things. It was just a fun conversation. Christopher was just salty dirt, the nicest guy maybe that I've met in the business. And the fact that I had him in the office here, I said, this is a great opportunity for me to get this on camera and just say, we went in 5 years from someone emailing me and saying, hey, Mike, I think you should check out this guy's books that no one's heard of. I think you like them, to, being here where I was moderating for one of his book signings here in town. So it was a lot of fun. And Christopher, welcome anytime. Amazing, amazing guys. I hope you guys will check out his books. Birthday book haul, that one also had 11,000 views for the month of August. It was a big month, and I always like to take time to say thank you to those things that were sent to me, and I did get lots of lovely things. And again, with book hauls, not really much else I can tell you. You know what they are at this point, and I'm glad you guys do enjoy them. And then my spooky season TBRs at 10,000 views. That one was special to me because I don't do the reading introductions very much anymore. That's just because just single book reviews don't really get the traffic anymore, and making those reading introductions, they take a lot of time. And I'm like, I'm not going to take that much time on something that, less than 1% of my audience is going to watch. So, but for the spooky season every year, I'll always do that. I'll take lines from the first, from the 4 or 5 authors I'm going to read that month and put them into a nice reading introduction. I did it for that one. It was really, really cool. Used some effects that I haven't ever gotten to use before, and I was quite proud of it. And again, it's exciting. I think spooky season is the one time a year where I get the most participation from the audience in wanting to read along with me, because I feel like at Halloween time, everyone's entitled to one good scare, right? Everyone's willing to maybe get out of their comfort zone and pick up a horror book or two. And trying to keep it in that fantasy, sci-fi, horror, miscellaneous kind of content I've been doing. I did try to make it, fantasy horror, sci-fi horror, etc. And I like the picks that I did make. So if you guys want to join us for any of those, I would be glad to have you. So how about some goals for the month of October? Look, for me, I just want to make sure I stay focused on spooky season, because I'm going to be straight with you. I've got review copies for books for 2 of my favorite authors in the game right now, Joe Abercrombie and John Gwynne. I got The Devils and Fury of the Gods, respectively, and I want to rip into those immediately. I mean, again, these are, if you're giving me top 5 fantasy authors working right now, they're both on that list. So it was very hard for me not to say, forget this spooky season stuff. We're going to go do some Abercrombie and some John Gwynne. But I said, look, you've already made your schedule. You've got just talked about participation for it. People want to read with you. Let's make sure we stay focused and finish those spooky season reads. Then we can get into those 2 books. But I am very, very excited to read the books from those new authors. And for me, look, it's just keep the main thing the main thing. I've talked about how the analytics are just awful for the channel right now, and that's fine. Look, I'm going to continue to talk about what I love. And the whole point of this channel, encouraging others to read. That's really what I'm here to do. And if I'm doing that to a smaller audience than I had planned originally, or what it looked like the trajectory was going to, that's fine. I'm glad that I've made that something that people prioritize in their life. And I'm going to keep doing that for the people that are here. So guys, I appreciate you. I love you so much for hanging around with me for 5 years. And, hey, if this is the ceiling, that's cool. I'm very happy. I'm proud of what we have built here. But again, that's why I think I'm dropping analytics from these wrap-ups going forward. But again, October is one of the best months of the year. Halloween is my favorite holiday, so I'm very, very excited. We're doing lots of stuff over on Mike's Media Reviews as well, because my wife, this is the only time of year she will watch horror movies, and we watch a bunch, and we're going to be talking and reviewing about a lot of horror movies. We actually did our lineup already. If you guys want to check that out over on Mike's Media Reviews, you can get it down in the description down below. But guys, that was the month of September. I'd love to know what your month was like. What are you watching? What are you reading? What did you like the most in October? Or sorry, September. What was your book of the month for September, rather? I would love to hear it, guys. You drop in the comments and let me know. I will talk to you there.